السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أما بعد. So I was told to speak about da'wah, if that's okay with everybody, right? Alright, but for a few people it might be a little repetitive, or you may have heard the material before, but for what it's worth we'll continue inshallah. And the first thing is that it is from the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that He chose people of the caliber of the Sahaba of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to spread Islam when spreading Islam was very difficult. And from His wisdom He chose us to spread Islam at times that were relatively easy. I mean, there is difficulty involved in da'wah and there's always a challenge involved in it no matter what day and age you live in. But at the same time we don't suffer or encounter the same amount or degree of difficulty that the companions of the Prophet ﷺ suffered. No one tries to burn us when we call them to Islam. No one tries to beat us physically, things of that sort. And I'm assuming the Australian public is also well-mannered in that sense, right? That they don't insult you when you try to give da'wah to them or anything. And typically also in the US it's quite easy. It was surprising to me to learn that in Canada people can be a little aggressive when you're calling them to Islam. I spoke to some of the du'at there and they would say that people would spit at them a lot of times, like 15 times a month maybe, One person was telling me my first day they spit at me, and some people were spit at their face and things like that. But beyond that, you really don't hear anything worse than that. Walillahi alhamd. You don't hear of anyone getting injured physically because they were calling people to Allah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His wisdom He gave us the day and age where it's not really that difficult to call people to Allah. And one thing you'll discover inshallah is that the challenge really is to follow up with people and keep them upon Islam. As for getting the shahada, it's not a difficult thing. And I know I say that a lot of times and people think that I'm just exaggerating or I'm making it sound very easy. But really it's not very difficult for someone to take the shahada. The real challenge is to follow up with that individual. So as I always say, some du'at, some friends of mine who are du'at, they're able to get about 70 shahadas in one day. 70 in one day. So if I got you a team of du'at like that, and we put a goal of getting you about 300 to 500 new shahadas every month, who would like that? Huh? Yeah? Okay, great. Right. So then we're going to do this to your community. Then we're going to bring you a team of expert du'at, and they'll bring you let's just be fair. Let's say just 300 new shahadas every month. So now these 300 shahadas every month, let's say 10% of them are going to be kicked out of their homes, and they're going to need a place to stay. So can you provide 30 homes, and some of them will be women, can you provide every month, and you have to do this every single month, a place for 30 people to stay. And then, let's say half of them are women, they're going to need hijabs and jilbabs and things of that sort. Can you provide that? And then for the 300, they're going to need masahif, and they're probably going to need prayer rugs, and the brothers will need a hat or something to make them feel comfortable. So, and this will continue the entire year long, so 300 per month, and that's 12 months a year. So now we see how much more of a challenge it is. And the reality is that, follow-up and da'wah, if it's a community effort, the da'wah becomes much more successful. And I always reference some incidents that took place about 1,000 years ago in the region of Mauritania. And anyone listened to that yet? No? Okay. Yeah? Okay. Do you remember the name of the first tribe, the large tribe? Naam, yes. So basically this was about 1,000 years ago in the southern part of Mauritania, where there were two large tribes there. It was the tribe of Lamtuna and Sinhaja. And basically the tribe of Sinhaja, their leader, he was upon the fitrah, and he knew that his people, what they were upon, it wasn't right. They called themselves Muslims, but there was alcohol consumption. There was people to the point where people were addicted to alcohol, and people يعني مثلا والعياذ بالله, like illicit sexual relations were rampant, and no one would ever say anything against it, and so on and so forth. So their leader, the leader of this tribe, he knew this was wrong, but he didn't have the knowledge to rectify the condition. And so we see then the importance of knowledge when it comes to da'wah. So he got an idea. He said, when it's time for Hajj, on the way back from Hajj, I'll bring with me someone who's knowledgeable, who's going to call my people to Islam. So he goes to Hajj, and on the way back he stops in the city of Al-Qayrawan, and he speaks to one of the Maliki scholars there, and he tells him that, this is the situation with my tribe. So that scholar sends with him a man by the name of Abdullah ibn Yasin. It's a great name, a great man, really everybody should know, Abdullah ibn Yasin. So he goes with him back to his tribe of Sinhaja, and he starts to call people to Allah. He finds really a horrific situation. And the people absolutely lost Islam, but they would just call themselves Muslims by name, but there was nothing, no attribute of a Muslim whatsoever. So the Shaykh started to call them to Allah, and of course they resisted him heavily, and they threatened him. You better stop this, stop calling us to this religion, and forbidding what's evil, and calling us to what's good. They hated it. So he continued, and then they beat him as they promised. They physically beat him, and they threw him out of the village. And they told him, if you come back, we'll kill you. So now, Abdullah ibn Yasin, rahimahullah, he was a big scholar in his area, so he could easily go back, and start his halaqat, and he has his students and everything. But he had himma, rahimahullah, he felt the weight of the responsibility. Now if he goes back to the village, they'll kill him. He'll die for the sake of Allah, which is not a problem, but he actually wanted to fix these people. If he dies, then they still remain upon what they remain. And he hated that new Muslims will be born thinking this is Islam. So then, if he goes back home, then he still didn't achieve his goal. So he does the unexpected, and he goes deeper into the desert, and he set a camp, a tent, by one of the rivers, one of the banks of the rivers in Senegal. And he sends a letter to the tribe. He said, I'm in such and such a place. Whoever wants to learn about Islam, you can come to me. There were 5 young men. These young men, they wanted to learn the religion. They wanted to approach the Shaykh, but they couldn't because of certain people will refer to them as Ashab al-Masalih. There are certain people who benefit financially and otherwise from the corruption of society. They benefit from that. And they benefit when there's alcohol being sold. They benefit and they remain in power. So these people didn't want anyone to sit with the Shaykh. So now that he moved to this tent near the banks of one of the rivers in Senegal, he sent the letter. He said, whoever's interested, you can come to me. So these 5 young men, they came to sit with the Shaykh. And he taught them everything. And he taught them their aqidah, their deen, their acts of worship. Now beyond that, he taught them also how to fish, and how to hunt, and how to cook, and how to fight with the sword. He really taught them how to become self-sufficient. So now, when Iman settled into their heart, this is the beautiful part about the story. When Iman settled in their heart, he said, everybody go back and bring one person. And this is the genius of the method. Bring one person. See now, how would we have done it? Everybody go back. Who can bring me 10? 10. Takbir. Allahu Akbar. Who can bring me 15? 15. Takbir. Allahu Akbar. Numbers. We love numbers. But he wanted to work with quality. So the 5, all of them went back and they brought a friend or a family member that they felt would most accept the message. And so the 5 became 10. And they had to set up another tent next to it. And then after a while the 10 would go and each of them would bring 1. So the 10 became 20. So just, you always know that when something multiplies at a good rate, it's better than big chunks of numbers. The old kind of quiz question, they tell you, if I give you a job for 30 days, I'll give you $10,000 a day. There are 2 payment plans. $10,000 a day for 30 days. Or I'll give you 1 cent. You have cents, yeah? That's the smaller increment. Okay. I'll give you 1 cent today. You work all day, I give you 1 cent. Next day you work all day, I double it, 2 cents. After that I double it to 4. After that, double it to 8, and so on and so forth. Who would accept the first payment plan? Okay, you guys are all intelligent, huh? So everybody would accept the second payment plan, right? Because with the first payment plan, you make $300,000. But with the second one, it comes up to millions of dollars. Because it keeps doubling, it keeps multiplying. Not just one charge, one excitement, then everything dies down. So the same thing here, really. So basically, the 10 became 20, the 20 became 40, and then they had to put new tents and new tents, and then he would split them up. Each 5 people will be under one person who will oversee them, and so on and so forth. It's kind of also like when the people from Medina came to pledge to the Prophet ﷺ, he broke them into groups and he put people in charge. So basically, within now this man that was won and beaten and thrown out, after 2 years, when he comes back to his village, to the people who beat him and threw him out, after 2 years he comes back with 1,200 men. In 2 years, 1,200. So, if you look, there's some people who've been giving da'wah for more than 2 years, but they don't have anything near to this number. 1,200, because he focused on the quality of the individuals. Quality. And so, my friends that I told you about who get 70 shahadas per day, they don't retain 1% of them. Not 1% remain upon Islam. So it becomes just, we get shahadas for numbers, and we show off our numbers to other people. And so, and speakers always have, you'll find people with phenomenal numbers that they claim. They'll go and say, well, I have 350. This guy will say, I have, 17,000, or this guy will have, 9,000. You just give me, you're counting heads, or what's the percentage of them that actually started to pray and got to the point where they memorized Al-Fatiha and so on and so forth. So the point is, to make the long story short, basically, when they became 1,200, he said, we won't be defeated because of numbers, so we can go and give da'wah to this village now. So now when they entered the village as 1,200 men who were du'at, the people couldn't resist them. They couldn't just beat all of them like they beat Abdullah ibn Yasin before. So they started to change, and the numbers started to increase, but it only increased to 1,400, so 200 more. So then what happens, the leader of the tribe, Lamtuna, they were the two tribes next to each other, they were basically Berber tribes, yeah? So the leader of the tribe next to them, he saw what the changes, and he loved what was happening here, the positive changes. So he went to his people and he said that I will not speak to any of you unless we all enter into Islam. And kind of like, it historically has happened also, where some of the companions would go and say, speaking to your men and women is haram until you enter the new religion. So he did the same thing, and overnight the number became 7,000 because his tribe entered and they all united. And shortly after he does that, he brings all his people to Islam, the real Islam. He passes away. He dies, rahimahullah. And his son, Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni, he takes over and he becomes in charge. So after a while, Abdullah ibn Yasin, rahimahullah, he dies, or he actually gets killed in battle. And so Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni, now he's in charge of the tribes and in charge of both groups. So he hears now, when he's in charge of this group, and like we say, the men now, just the number is 7,000. We're talking about the men only, not the women and children, just the men. And the numbers doubled to become 14,000 within just a short period of time. So then he hears of a quarrel in another region that's not under their control between two Muslim groups. So he goes to make peace between these two groups. He takes half of the number of soldiers, so he takes 7,000, and he leaves someone, his cousin, in charge as like the interim kind of president. And this man, his name was Yusuf ibn Tashfin, or also pronounced Tashafin. So Yusuf ibn Tashfin, Abu Bakr ibn Umar ibn al-Lamtuni, he says, I'm going to go and fix this problem. While I'm gone, I'll be back soon. Just sit here and be in charge. So imagine someone tells you, just sit in my place, I'll be right back. He goes and he fixes the problem between these two tribes, and then he realizes that there are a lot of other tribes. Some of them never heard of Allah. Some of them worship trees, some of them worship idols, some of them just totally astray. So he said, I can't go back. So he starts to give them da'wah. He starts to call them to Allah. So when does he come back? He said, just wait for me, I'll be right back. He keeps giving da'wah for 15 years. 15 years he's giving da'wah, calling these people to Allah. In the meantime, Yusuf ibn Tashfin said, I'm not just going to sit here and wait. He's gone giving da'wah to the south. I'm going to go up to the north. And so he goes northwards. He takes the other half and he goes up to the north. And he brings a lot of areas into Islam. And he brings, so when Yusuf ibn Tashfin, Abdullah ibn Umar comes back, he finds that, or Abu Bakr ibn Umar, he comes back and he finds now new cities that he never heard of. He finds the city of Marrakesh, and all of Mauritania now is under Islam, and Morocco, and so many places now under his control. So what he does something really unheard of historically. He says, you run here, you be the president, you're not replacing me, you be in charge. As for me, I have found the sweetness of calling people to Allah. And he turns back down again to the south, and he starts calling and bringing places into Islam. So he brings into Islam now under their control. And this is basically the story of Al-Murabitun, known historically, or in English Al-Muravids. And they bring, so now they're in control of all of Morocco, all of Mauritania, all of Senegal, all of Tunisia, Gabon, Nigeria. They bring Islam to Nigeria for the second time, and so many other places. To make a long story short, the number of people who are Muslims in this area where they did this work, where Abdullah ibn Yasin started and he was beaten and thrown out, one man, and then he taught Abu Bakr ibn Umar al-Lamtuni, and he continued upon the same system. The number of people who are Muslim in those regions by, let's say, the census for 2 years ago is 170 million Muslims. 170 million. They're Muslims today from the efforts that were started there. And it was started by one man, but the whole system focused on quality and not quantity. Because the truth is, quality will bring you quantity. طيب. So with that being said now, we start to realize that it's a community effort. You see, in our story, the whole community were du'at. The soldiers, the men were qualified du'at. They had the knowledge and everything else. But their families also understood it and they supported them. And the community worked together. So now if I were to bring you those 300 shahadas per month, the 3 du'at or 4 who bring them into Islam will find it very difficult to keep up with them. So then the community would have to take charge and would have to work together in order to keep these people upon Islam, pool our resources together. It's a lot of work. So I put this introduction so that now we're going to discuss some quick da'wah tactics. And while I'm talking to you, you will think that this guy, came all the way from America just to trick us. And I don't believe anything this guy is saying. That's fine. All you have to do is put it to the test. The idea is that really, for the past 3 or 4 years, I've been traveling every weekend. I'm in a different state, sometimes a different country, and we're teaching this da'wah workshop of how to get people to enter into Islam quite, in an efficient way. So within 10 minutes, you can speak to a total stranger, and inshallah, within 10 minutes, they can be Muslim. Now, of course, that's not a guarantee. So if it takes you 11 minutes, you come and ask me for your money back, right? So a lot of times it took, sometimes it takes 15 minutes, sometimes 7 or 8 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes. I personally had a shahada that took me 8 months. 8 months, and we worked so hard with this person. We read ayat together. We argued, we look at the arguments that were logical. We read even biblical verses together. I would tell him, go ask your priest, say what he tells you. Then he'll come back and say, well, he said this. And tell him, well, whose argument was stronger? He'll say, your argument. It took 8 months for this person to become Muslim. Then there's another shahada that took me less than 10 seconds. Really less than 10 seconds. And I didn't do anything. I didn't even say anything. And as I say, there was an event where we were passing out pamphlets. I gave a pamphlet to somebody, and he stopped and he started reading it. So the fact that he stopped, to me, I read into that. We've been passing out pamphlets all day. No one stops. Why did he stop? That means there's something. So I went back to him, before I could say anything yet, when I got to him, he said, alright, what do I do? So it has nothing to do with me, it has nothing to do with you. The reality is that this man was probably searching for the truth for so long. Maybe he read all of the Quran, half of the Quran. He's been interested in Islam. Maybe his uncle's been a Muslim, calling him to become a Muslim. So when I crossed his path, maybe that was the last sign that he needed. That was the last piece of encouragement. So he said, what do I do now? So the reality is, it's possible. And you can meet someone at a store and they might ask you if you're a Muslim, and you might explain to them in a few minutes, they might enter into Islam. Because of a couple of things. The first is that there are two types of hidayah, right? There's hidayatul irshad and hidayatul tawfiq. Hidayatul irshad is when you direct someone to the truth. All you have to do is show them what the truth is. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَإِنَّكَ لَتَهْدِي إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. Verily you guide to the straight path. So it means you can guide people by showing them what the truth is. The second type of hidayah is hidayat at-tawfiq or hidayah tawfiqiyya. This is when Allah opens someone's heart to Islam. And that's why you find a verse that would sound almost that it's contrary to the verse we just mentioned, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. You don't guide those whom you love, but Allah guides whomever He pleases. In the other verse, you do guide to the straight path. So you would think that there's some kind of contradiction, but the truth is, Allah is talking about different types of guidance. One, where you direct someone to the truth. The other one, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens their heart to Islam. So the distinction is absolutely necessary and crucial, because when you realize that your job is just to direct people to the truth, nothing can stop you, inshaAllah. Nothing can stop you. All you have to do is show them what the truth is. Allah opens their heart to Islam, alhamdulillah. And you can show them the truth more than one time. You can constantly call people to Allah. And that's why sometimes I'll see someone with purple hair and piercings and all sorts of crazy things on their appearance, and I'll say, let me go give that person da'wah. The people with me will say, no, he looks difficult. What's difficult? There are two types of hidayah. My job is to talk to them. That's not difficult. And the part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no one would dare say that's difficult. So who can really stop you then? And who can come in your way? Yes? طيب. So, with that being said then, your da'wah techniques, and a lot of Muslims unfortunately think good da'wah is just to have the non-Muslim ask you questions and then you answer whatever the questions are. Or, on the other side, that you just throw information at people. And that's why you find, if you ever hear, especially non-experienced du'at, their da'wah, they keep throwing bits and pieces of information at the person. Yes, Islam is a religion of peace. Yes, in the Quran Allah mentions plate tectonics and things like that. Yes, in the Quran Allah mentions oceanography, and there's some other embryology and some other miracles. And then you throw another piece of information. Yeah, we have to fast and we have to pray. Then you throw another piece of information. But you know what? You're just throwing information at the person. What you need to do, you need to get the person to move through a process. You need to channel their thoughts, organized, and lead them to that shahada. It has to be organized. And so, as we say, the first step is what? The people who took the course. It's the first step. That our foundation is what? Tawheed. And then we want to build upon that, right? About the existence of Allah. So I meet someone in the street, I don't know. And by the way, for the purpose of our talk, we're talking only about calling non-Muslims to Allah. We're not talking about calling Muslims, because that's also da'wah. But I'm specifically talking about calling non-Muslims to Allah. So here, I meet a stranger in the street. I need to know if they believe in a creator or not, because that, if they don't, I can't build upon that. So how do I find out if someone believes in a creator or not? Ask them. And how? Can you give me the wording? Are you Muslim? Possible. That's actually my technique in the US. When I see someone, especially if they have the look. Do you know what I mean when I say they have the look? Who knows what that means? When someone's got that look that they could be a Muslim? Yeah? Okay. Sometimes I say that, people look at me like I'm crazy. What does that mean, the look? But sometimes, you see someone, you know that they're close to becoming a Muslim. They look like a Muslim. And sometimes I'll tell people, I'll ask someone like that, are you a Muslim? He'll say no. I say, well, why aren't you a Muslim? And then I'll say, because you look like a Muslim. One time somebody asked me, what does a Muslim look like? I said, well, I don't know, but you have this calm look on your face, and I don't know why you're not a Muslim. Anyways, so now we need to find out who you're talking to. This is one of the first steps. Don't assume anything. Find out who you're talking to. So I want to know if this person believes in a creator or not. If they don't, I can't move forward. If they do, alhamdulillah. So one of the easy ways is to say, do you believe in a creator? Is there a God? It's a yes or no question. Yeah? It's a close-ended question. That's the best kind of question. Do you believe in a creator? Yes or no? That's it. It saves you time. As opposed to one of our friends who used to actually ask, what's your view on God? Which basically it's saying, here, let me pull up a chair and please. And then the person will start reminiscing. Yeah? Well, it started in 1963. Long story. So is there a creator? He says, yes, this is my first solid foundation. See, remember what we were saying, we're not just throwing information, we want to move in an organized way. So now from establishing the fact that there is a God, it's easy and easy transition into proving that that Allah sent prophets. Yeah? Why is it easy to go from the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal to prophets? Who can say? There's no wrong answer, but who can say? Why is there a nice link between the existence of Allah and the fact that He sent prophets? Anybody? Okay, those who took the course, yeah? Don't make me look bad, people. Those who took the course.
Does it make sense?
It makes sense. Give us like one aspect of it.
God created human beings because He wants to show them the right path.
Excellent. Jazakallah khair. Very simple. The brother said Allah created human beings. He wants to show them the right path. So that means Allah has to have at some point announced His existence, subhanahu wa ta'ala, to us. Right? He didn't just create us and then nothing happened. So the message of Allah has to come to the humanity, because Allah is fair and He is just. It has to come through other human beings, because that's more realistic. To send humans to humans. They're also the better role model, humans to other human beings. So if Allah sent angels to tell mankind, a lot of things would be wrong with that. The first thing is there would be no test, right? And sometimes a non-Muslim will actually ask you a question like this. They will say, well, if God exists, why doesn't He come on television and speak to us? Yeah, I mean, really, they'll say something like that. And you tell them, well, where's the test then? It's like if your professor says you have a big exam, and you come and sit down, the answer's on the board. Is that a test? No. And if everybody could see that, or could see the angels or something like that, there would be no test. And that's why once you see the unseen, it's too late. I mean, I guarantee you, Fir'aun, when he saw the angel of death coming to him, he said, I think Musa a.s. was right. But it's too late. Once you see the unseen, it's too late. Once the sun comes up from the west, it's too late. You saw a huge sign now. So anyways, so then Allah Azza wa Jal, out of His fairness, He announced His presence to us. He sends His messengers to teach us right from wrong, what is acceptable with Allah, what is not acceptable, and to warn us that there is a day of resurrection. So now there's a logical connection between Allah and the fact, and out of His fairness, that He sends prophets to let us know about things. And now that I established the prophets, this was my second step, I want to talk about two in particular. Which ones? Naam. Yes, somebody said Isa alayhi salam and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That's how you become Muslim. Isa alayhi salam, because they have an incorrect belief concerning him. Yeah. So then, without getting into biblical debates and this verse and here Jesus never said that, and comparing the Trinity to eggs and to all these kinds of things that they do, you can kind of bypass that in a very nice way, and just so as not to be repetitive to the brothers who heard this, maybe Brother Anwar heard this maybe 5 times by now. I'm sure he's sick of me. So basically we tried this method on someone. When I asked him a simple question, I said, is it logically possible Jesus could have been one of the prophets of Allah? Is it logically possible? I didn't ask him, do you believe that? Do you love that? Do you prefer that? Is it possible? And he said, yes, it's possible. Because he can't say no. Because we explained how Allah sent so many prophets before to mankind and to humanity. And then He could have sent Jesus as a prophet and not as His son. It's possible, if He wanted to, He could send Jesus as His prophet. So he said, yes, it's possible. He didn't say, I believe it at this point. So then I said, is it also possible that if Allah wanted, He could have sent another prophet after Isa alayhi salam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, 600 years later or 1400 years ago, who also came with the same basic message as all the prophets of Tawheed and the message of, being good to your parents and your neighbor, not stealing and not lying. So is it possible that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam could have been one of the prophets of Allah? And the man said, yes, it's possible. He can't say no, right? You almost never get a no here. Because if Allah wanted, He could have sent a prophet. You can't say no. So then from this point, we went and explained the 5 pillars of Islam. We've already explained one of them, Shahadatain. And now we've got 4 more to go. And you go over them very briefly. It takes you about 45 seconds. You ask him, do you understand each one? Yes. And anyone causing you a problem, friction, doesn't make sense? No, everything's fine. Because logically, everyone understands the concept of being grateful to Allah and worshipping Allah. So he had no problem with that. Giving to the poor is just such a small percentage, the zakat. And, even the greedy person would not admit that it's too much. So he will say, okay, that's fine. Ramadan, 1 month out of the year, you put great effort. You don't use bad words. You increase in your worship of Allah. You draw nearer to Allah. You treat the servants of Allah better. The problem with that? He said, no problem with that. And then Hajj once a year if you're physically, financially capable. Any problem? He said, no. So then these are the 5 pillars we said. These are the 5 most important things in their religion. So now you realize whoever we're talking to in this hypothetical, we've agreed on the basic things of Islam now. So the next step is to say, well, this is basically the most important things in the religion, and you agreed with them. You actually right now have the ingredients to become a Muslim. You have the ingredients of a Muslim right now. And this is actually what I told this person. I said, do you even know how you become a Muslim? He said, no. And so the first thing, I made it look like it's not a big task. You make it very easy. So I said, well, you don't have to go on any journey for 40 nights and 40 days or anything of that sort. All you have to do is say with your tongue and believe in your heart what you just said you don't have a problem with. That there's no God worthy of worship except Allah, and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His servant and His messenger. So I say, this is exactly what I told him, I say you should become a Muslim right now. So the man actually said yes. The whole talk was just a few minutes. So sometimes people think, well, if you talk to someone for a few minutes, then they're not going to be a very strong Muslim. But if you talk to them for a year or two, mashallah, they're going to be big, good Muslim. Yeah. But there's no such thing, there's no such formula. He was actually very serious about Islam. And he would call me to do follow-up with me. He would call me and say, look, when are you going to teach me to pray? And I want to learn the Quran. He was very serious about it. So the point is now, in this in our story basically, we established that there is a creator. And we use that as the first foundation. From there we made the logical next step, which is that the fact that if there is a God, then He has to He must have sent prophets. And then of all the prophets that He sent, we wanted to talk about 2 because they were of vital importance. Now once we got that away, we wanted to talk about the pillars. And there's a great benefit in explaining the 5 pillars of Islam. Because you might encounter someone and you might speak to them for 7 or 8 minutes and they're convinced with everything that you say. So you ask them, would you become a Muslim? And they say no. Why? Well, I need to read more because I'm not very I'm convinced with everything you said, but I need to make sure what I'm getting into. I need to read more and make sure that there's nothing crazy in this religion that will make me leave it later on. So maybe you explain some nice things to me, but then after I become Muslim, I discover you have to swallow a live frog every Wednesday after Maghrib. So then I think, well, I wish I knew about this first. I wouldn't have become Muslim. So when you explain the 5 pillars, you're explaining the 5 most important things in the religion. And you're really saying, if the 5 most important things did not scare you away from the religion of Allah, then there is less of a chance something of lesser importance, everything is important, but something of lesser importance will scare you away from becoming a Muslim. So I'll give you an example, a true story. And again, apologies to the brothers who have been hearing this for the past few days. This was about 10 years ago. I met this man, and he was he's this old man, old Caucasian American man. He's got this huge white beard. He's got tattoos all over him, like devil tattoos. He's got skull rings and things of that sort. And as an old man, he said, basically they told me he's interested in Islam. He works at a gas station. So I went to him and I said, I hear you're interested in Islam. He said, yeah. I said, well, why haven't you become Muslim? He said, I have to read the whole Quran just to make sure there's nothing wrong with it. If I read the whole thing and it's good, then I'll become Muslim. So then, now I could just leave, right? But no, well, let's see how much he has read so far. So I said, how much have you read? He said, I've read 1/3 of the Quran. I said, okay. Did you find any problems so far? He said, so far, so good. No problems at all. I said, now, what might you tell him? If he says 1/3 is okay, what could you say? Naam? Keep going? Jazakallah khair. I mean, he probably will keep going, but excellent. If 1/3 up to this point is okay, then there's a good, fair, probability that the other 2/3 will be okay also. So, from just analyzing 1/3, if it's good, it's probably good to go ahead. Right? So, that's what I suggested to him, and he got very upset. He had this complex. He didn't like people to suggest things to him. So he said, you're telling me what to do. Nobody tells me what to do. I said, okay, fine. So basically, we couldn't come to any conclusion. He had to read the whole Quran, then he'll become Muslim. I said, okay, may Allah preserve him until he finishes reading the Quran. This was many years ago, and I didn't see him again for perhaps 9 years. And it was 2.5 or 3 years ago when I bumped into him again. Remember what he said? If he reads the Quran, there's nothing wrong with it, he'll become a Muslim. So I met him. I said, did you finish reading the Quran? He said, yes. That was the first thing, right? Did you find anything wrong with it? He said, no. Did you become Muslim? He said, no. I said, why not? He said, well, right now I'm reading Bukhari. I said, yeah, Muslims haven't read Bukhari. What do you think you're doing? So, what do you think this man is trying to do? I already hinted to it earlier. What do you think he's trying to do? Naam? Aywa, exactly. He wants to know everything about this religion before he enters it. He wants to know everything about the religion before he enters it. And I'm trying to link this story to the importance or the benefit, you don't have to, but the benefit of mentioning the 5 pillars. Because you're saying, look, if the 5 most important things, these pillars, who hold up your Islam, if the 5 most important things don't scare you, then there's less of a chance something of lesser importance will scare you away from the religion. So that's like someone who agrees with the 5 pillars and the fundamentals of Islam, but then you tell him enter the masjid with your right, he's like, no, that's a little strange. I don't want this religion. There's less of a chance that will happen because he agreed with the most important things. So this man is trying to read everything about Islam before he enters Islam. The problem is that this is not how anything works in this world. And a lot of times to get people to be logical about the religion, you ask them or make an analogy to the dunya. You know, when someone doesn't understand something, give them an analogy related to the dunya. So we're going to do an exercise here, and I'll ask those who are familiar with it to contain themselves slightly and let everyone else get a chance. So we came up with this analogy that has worked for us, alhamdulillah, tremendously well. If someone says, look, you spoke to me about the 5 pillars of Islam, every word you said I agree with 100%. But I just can't enter your religion now from a 7 or 8 minute speech. I need to read everything, I need to read more about it. I need to flip through the pages and something like that. So in this case, you give a simple analogy. And like I said, it has worked for us tremendously, but there is no magic wand in Dawah. So you might try it, and it might not work, and say, well, that brother was a liar. So, but you might try it again another time, and it might work well for you. Basically, we give them an analogy to an automobile. So you tell someone, and this is what I'm going to offer you now, but just before we do it, I would like to tell you, don't be suspicious. The richest man in Australia took his shahada this morning, and so he comes here at Iska, and he meets all of you, and he's so happy. He comes to you after the salah, he gives you the keys to his car. He just became Muslim, so it's not stolen, Okay, there are no drugs in the boot, as you guys say. There are no drugs in the trunk or anything like that. He offers you the keys to his car. He says, listen, brother, my car is outside, it's parked. It's, what do we say was a good car here? Bentley? Okay. Naam? The Sheikh said Jaguar, so khalas, we'll stick with Jaguar. So he says, I have a Jaguar outside, it's a 2008. If you like it, it's yours. You can go examine it. Alright? So now I would like someone to put their hand up and tell me, what would you examine if they made you this offer? Go examine the car. If you like it, you can keep it. Give me some things, specific things you would examine in that car. Somebody put your hand up and tell me. Naam? Okay, so the Sheikh said he would check the engine. Somebody else. What would you check? Naam? Is it really? Okay, but tell me parts. What would you check to see if it's working? Interior? Okay, so good. So you check the engine, you check the interior. What else would you check? Yes, sir.
Exterior.
Exterior. Very good. You check the body, right? Because maybe it's a Bentley, but the train hit it. It's good. So there's three things. What else? The wheels. What about them? Oh, okay. So if I give you a 2008 Jaguar, it just doesn't have wheels, you're not going to take it. It's perfect. You're just going to say, okay. So what else will you check? These three things. Yes, sir? The accelerator? What? Like the pedal itself? If it's not there, you won't buy it? You won't take it? It's free. It's just a little piece of plastic like this. I'll cut my slippers and put it there. What else? Naam? Transmission. Thank you very much. Transmission. So in our examples, the things you called out were the most important things. The engine, the transmission, the body, the interior. When the most important things made sense, you accept it. Yes? You don't come back and say, how dare you, and you offer me this car. It's missing the button for the radio. Or the radio antenna is bent. These are minor things. And so this is the analogy we actually tell people when we're telling them to come into Islam. Actually, the last time I used this with a person, we agreed on the basics. He said, I'm the kind of person, I like to take my time. What can you tell him? I said, look, here are the keys to a Mercedes-Benz outside. What will you check? And I got him to say all the important things. And then I said, when the most important things in that car agreed with you, you accepted. Why didn't you accept Islam now when the most important things made sense to you? So he felt ashamed a little bit. Yeah. How come I will take the car but I won't accept this religion? The most important things, you didn't. So nobody now, compare our man who wants to read all of Bukhari. What he's really trying to do, if you compare it to offering him the car, he's trying to take 100,000 kilometer, I was going to say mile, test drive. So you offer someone the car, he says, look, the car looks alright, but I won't take it until I drive it for 100,000 kilometers. Doesn't make sense. And nothing in life works like this. Nothing. Whenever you want to do, you want to get a house, rent a house, buy a car, buy a suit. You never say, well, let me keep it for 7 months, or I'm going to move my family and the children and my grandmother and everybody into the house. We're going to live here for a few months. If we like it, then we might start renting from you, sir. It's not going to work. Nothing works like that. So why is it with the religion people don't want to be logical? So, and what's like my countdown so I can organize thoughts? Who's the timekeeper? We have to keep it, unless it's going to be me, Jabir, and the brother. So, okay, so that's kind of like, let's keep that enough for the basics. You explain the basics, and then from there, we go to the golden rule, which is the golden rule. Now, the golden rule is you go for the gold, which means you make the sale, which means you ask for the shahada. See, this is the golden rule. I mean, in da'wah, the rules, it's situational. There are no hard and fast rules. Some people, they try to make up rules for everything in da'wah. Everything. But no, it's flexible. I mean, the way I talk to someone depends on many things, right? So right now, if you introduce me to anyone in the street, when I talk to them, my talk is going to be based on the individual. Are they a man or a woman? It makes a big difference, right? Not in the words that I use, or maybe in the words also, but like I won't be very close if it's a woman. I won't maintain eye contact. I might put my hand on the man's shoulder. I won't do that with a woman. So it makes a difference. The person old or young, it makes a difference. Is the place quiet or not? It makes a difference. Do I have 1 hour or 15 minutes? It makes a big difference. So da'wah is so flexible, the da'iyah has to be flexible as well. But a lot of times people try to insist on rules. Like I always say, one famous speaker, he says that in order to give da'wah, you need to be African American. This is in the US. So if you're Pakistani, Arab or Indian, please get out. It's not fair. And who makes up these rules? But the only rule I insist upon is that you ask for the shahada. In the case where you talk to someone, you agreed on all the basics, the fundamentals. What now? That's like saying, walk with me to my house. When you get to the house, you don't invite him in. You slam the door in his face. Why did we agree on the Tawheed and the Prophet ﷺ being the final messenger and the pillars? Then what? He's there. He has all the ingredients of being a Muslim now. So then you offer him to enter into Islam. And this is how, and I'm just, because of time, brevity of time, I'm not going to go into the many times where the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he would go call the people to Islam, he would call them to Islam. Even the sentence itself sounds ridiculous, that he went to call a tribe to Islam, but when he got there, he didn't invite them to Islam. Doesn't even make sense. So that if you agree with someone on all the basics, then you invite them to enter into Islam. That's how it works. And if you compare it, just to make it more vivid, if you compare it to sales, they tell you that 97% of the time a sale doesn't work or doesn't go through. It's that the salesman didn't ask for the sale. 97% of the time. 3% of the time, it's the 1,001 different reasons. Well, they didn't accept cash and I had a credit card. And they had this and they had that. And they had this color and I wanted the other color. And it wasn't the right size. It wasn't the right time. I didn't get permission from my wife. All these other excuses. All these excuses are in the 3%. 97% of the time, something won't happen. The salesman didn't ask for the sale. So then, you as a da'iyah, if you don't ask someone to enter into Islam, they won't. And this is something I learned the hard way. I used to go in front of this store that belonged to a Muslim. Every Saturday, I've got my bags and I've got my thobe on, I've got my hat on, I've got all the gear on, So I go, and I stop people and say, let me give you a 5-minute introduction to Islam. I give them a pamphlet, I tell them about Islam, and then when I finish the introduction, we keep staring at each other. It was a very strange moment. I would just keep looking at him and he keeps looking back at me. I didn't know what would happen. I thought he would beg me to let him become a Muslim. I really thought so. I discovered, people first, they don't like to change. They're afraid of change. Even if they know there's something good, they're still afraid to change. People who smoke, they know there's good in that change. They can't change. People who want to diet, people can't change or don't want to change or are lazy to change. So you have to motivate people. And you have to ask them to become your brother in Islam. You do it in a gentle way and everything. And you say, well, look, you have the ingredients of a Muslim now. So why don't you become a Muslim right now? So you ask for the shahada. I'm just going to, for brevity of time, not go into many more evidences why you need to ask for the shahada once you agree on everything. Otherwise, why are you even standing there and convincing everybody, convincing the person to come to all these common points with you if you're not going to do anything about it? So that's the first golden rule. The second golden rule is to create the urgency. Create the urgency. And a lot of times, their da'wah is basically, here's the Quran, and, this is a brief introduction to Islam, and take your time. And so people go, what do you think they do? Maybe they'll read a little, then it goes up on the shelf, then it never comes down from the shelf. How many times have we met people who say, yeah, I've got a copy of the Quran, I got it 10 years ago. Did you read it? No. Because there's no urgency. Shaitan is going to be working extra hard to make sure they don't have time for the Quran. With work, with whatever else they have in life. So you have to create the urgency. And how many times in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ he would say, Ya fulan, qul la ilaha illallah. How many times he'd tell people to become Muslim. If you read in the seerah of Ibn Hisham, how Abu Sufyan became a Muslim, you'll see the Prophet ﷺ created urgency. He took the shahada, and it wasn't like what you would, for lack of a better term, describe as like a superb shahada. He just did it because the army is entering and it's kind of a tough predicament, but he wasn't forced because he had the jiwar, he was under protection. If you read how Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt, when he announced his Islam, he actually said the kalima. He became a Muslim really. When he went to his people, he said, I became a Muslim. But then they pressured him and he turned back. But it did work. The Prophet created the urgency. So you have to create the urgency. And sometimes people think when I say create the urgency, it means force people. No, first of all, well, at least I can speak for the United States. You can't force anybody to do anything they don't want. They will tell you, in French also, what they feel about you. And if you don't understand French, they'll use sign language also. Yeah. So you can't force anyone to do anything. You can encourage, but don't pressure. As a da'iyah, you have to feel these things. If you feel you're pushing someone too hard, then don't. If you feel that they're just saying the shahada to get you out of their face, then you're doing something wrong. And it happens a lot. But brothers, don't read into that because they want the head count. They want to come at the end of the day and say, how many shahadas did you get? I got 5. Oh, 5. MashaAllah, you're a beginner, huh? I got 9. Allah, we've seen that. So the point is, you create the urgency. I'm going to give you one illustration. Basically, there was some kind of event. We had to give a speech to non-Muslims. At the end, they brought me this young woman, and they said she wants to become Muslim. So then I had to check everything with her, right? Belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the 4 pillars, meaning the other 4, right? Everything was 100%. So I told her, well, you have the ingredients of a Muslim, so I had to go for the gold. So I said, why don't you become a Muslim right now? She said, no, I want to take my time. I said, well, you have the ingredients of a Muslim. Why don't you just do it now? She said, I need more time. So now I'm negotiating. I said, well, how much time do you need? She said, 2 months. So I said, 2 months is too long. That's all I said. I didn't push. I just said 2 months, too long. So then look what she said now. All I said was just 2 months, too long. She said, okay, the end of the week. And it was a Wednesday, so that's 2 days. So she went from 2 months to 2 days by herself. So then I said, well, let me try one more time, no harm. It's Wednesday today, what's going to happen Thursday, Friday? Just do it now, khalas. So she said, no, I'll come to your Islamic center, I'll do it Friday after the class, inshallah. I said, okay, if there's nothing else I can say to convince you. And she said, no, inshallah, I'm firm. Friday is when I'll do it. I said, okay, I'll tell you what, that's fine. We'll see you on Friday. But just do me a favor. From now until Friday, please wear your seatbelt and drive very carefully and don't die. She said, oh, you're scaring me. I said, well, I'm sorry, but that's how it works. The angel of death doesn't say, well, she has a Friday appointment. Saturday will come to her, inshallah. That's not how it works. So I told her, a lot of people, they're interested in Islam and they die. I'm just being frank here. We're creating the urgency, yeah? So I said, a lot of people die before they become Muslim. So just be careful, drive carefully, don't die until Friday. And I walked away. So I get in my car, I'm driving home, they called my cell phone. They said, the brother, the sisters, you took her shahada, alhamdulillah. So the urgency. Doesn't mean you force anybody or pressure anybody. But a lot of times people say, here's the Quran, take the rest of your life, yallah, have a nice life. No. Say, look, I'm going to give this to you, and I've been doing this for a while. I know you're going to probably take it, put it somewhere at home. You're not going to read it. You're going to be diverted with so many other things. So make sure you read it. Make sure you don't procrastinate. And one time I took a ride with one person. I told him, don't procrastinate so many times that at the end of the journey, he was convinced that he was going to be a Muslim. He was sure. And he would tell me things like, yeah, I'll become a Muslim right after I read the Quran. Anyways, I don't want to take up too much time. Should we just stop? Yeah? 15 minutes, you said? طيب خلاص. So then we'll stop there. Sallallahu mubarak ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. We'll see if there are any questions, preferably easy ones, concerning da'wah, inshallah. Yes, sir.
If the person doesn't believe in God, what do you propose? What's the opposite of what we actually do?
Excellent. Alright. So the brother is saying, what if the person doesn't believe in God? What do you do? So obviously you can't build. You have to establish that there is a God before you can move forward. There are many different ways to tackle the atheist. And just want to say right now that the atheist is not difficult to talk to. A lot of people are so afraid of the atheist. And the atheist would have you believe that they're scientific and rational, and you're irrational because you believe in a being that you have not seen, or so on and so forth. But of course, not everything that you believe in is things that you have seen, or things that you have seen with your own eyes. Because there's also mental seeing, right? How many of us right now in this room have seen their brain? Nobody? Okay, but usually there's one or two who had a CT scan or some kind of scan, and they saw their brain, they're like, oh, alhamdulillah, it's there, right? But the rest of us who haven't seen our brain, we're very confident that we have one. How do we know it? We don't need to see it or touch it or hear it or anything. We know for sure we have one. Because we know now logically that we wouldn't be surviving without one. Your heart wouldn't beat, you wouldn't be able to see or speak or anything, or your lungs wouldn't move. You wouldn't be surviving. So I don't need to see my brain at all. Because it's like I can see it mentally. No pun intended. So, the atheist then, one of the things is to set the agreement with them that I'm not going to show you anything. A lot of times they'll ask me, are you going to show me something? Well, what do you expect? I'll get a long pole and open a window in the heavens or something and show you angels or something? No, I'm not going to show you anything. I'm going to show you through mental seeing. Now, just very quickly to answer your question, if you don't have time for the atheist, give him a copy of the Quran. Quran is unbelievably powerful, very, very powerful with the atheist. But I would suggest you give it to him with some directions on how to read the Quran. That you tell him that they're not just going to go and start looking for flaws and trying to be dishonest in reading the Quran. That you tell them you read it, and you will find that there are no flaws or discrepancies or contradictions in it, and you're not going to. A discrepancy isn't something that disagrees with your hawa. That's not how you fault the Quran, and understand it within its context, and so on and so forth. That's one way. Another way is you can prove obviously you can talk a little bit about the Quran, about how no human being could have written the Quran. Some of the things you could mention are, for example, grammatical style. What else? Yeah? Anything? What else could you use about the Quran that would show that no human being could have written it? Okay, there's some of the science in the Quran. Yes, sir?
There's no contradiction.
There's absolutely no contradiction in the Quran. What else? Prophecies. Things talking about the future in the Quran, such as وَلِبَتُ الرُّوم, that the Romans will be defeated after an odd number of years.
Related about the past, what happened, and we have the evidence now.
Like the history, there's history in the Quran. Alright, excellent. So then you can talk about it from that point of view. Or you know what? It's just something so powerful, you could just recite it. And there's so many people who have done this, but I would love, maybe someone here could do that, Maybe your team, Sheikh. Bring a non-Muslim in the room and just recite, let's say, Ayatul Kursi, and then ask them what do you think they felt. There's a brother who did that. He would bring non-Muslims and sit them down and just recite Ayatul Kursi. Wallah, and they don't know a word of Arabic. One of them said to him, you're reciting the word of God, and I think it's talking about the attributes of Allah. Okay, let me say that one more time. You people, you were not amazed. I'm going to say it one more time, pretend you're amazed, okay? This is my first time to say it. He said to him, I think you were reading the word of God, and it was saying something about the attributes of Allah. Okay, I think it's a long night. So anyways, so basically the atheist is not difficult to talk to. Sometimes for fun, I just love to enjoy my time with the atheist. I'll say, well, how did we come into existence? And so what do they have to fall back on? They have to. What is it? The Big Bang Theory. They have to. So he'll say the Big Bang Theory. Then I'll pretend like theory. Do you know what a theory is, by the way? It's not like fact. It's not like proven or it can be tested with an experiment. It's just, scientific guess. It's assumption. You're going to base your whole life on assumption? Wallahi, they just look down out of shame. But, sorry, to make it long-winded, but the bottom line is this. Don't reinvent the wheel. There's so much that has been by Muslims on the internet on how to talk to the atheist. Just read it once and then go from there, inshallah. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So the sister also says that I didn't know how to start or bring up the topic of Islam. It's actually harder to get started than I thought. How do you bring up the topic for the first time? You know, there are so many ways you can bring up the topic. Just from the weather you can move straight, if you wanted to. From the weather you can move straight to Islam. From the name introduction you can move straight to Islam. What's your name? I'm Jonathan. Oh, Jonathan, I'm Kamal. Kamal, it's an Arab name. It's a Muslim name, originally from Sudan. You know anything about Islam? Anything about Sudan? Sudan is, this % Muslim. You know anything about Islam? Boom, we're gone. We're talking about the weather. It's very hot today. Yeah, it's very hot, but it's hotter where I'm from. It's Sudan. It's a country that's 80% Muslim. You know anything about Islam? There's so many ways. There's so many ways. We could talk about a certain food, and we could just go from there. So, you will find your own ways. I'm telling you. Don't ever wait for any speaker in the world to tell you this is how you start a conversation. You will find, when you want it, you will find your ways. Just like when you want to complain. So sister, if you're married, the same way any topic you can bring up the topic you want to bring so you can get to your husband, you're very creative. Yeah? So what's the topic that she wants to bring up to the husband? مثلا that he always leaves the house, right? So her husband says, why don't we buy this new car? From this new car, she can make it about you always leave the house. Well, that's not a bad idea. We could buy that car. And you know something? Put on your shoes right now and go to the dealership to look at it. Because you're always leaving the house anyways. So go and leave now and go see. So a million and one ways. Just like you can bring up a topic that's bothering you and find a way to bring it up. I'm sure my wife now, I tell her, I love bananas. Yes, but from bananas we go straight to something that I don't want to talk about. So the same way you can be creative when you really want something, you can be creative and bring your own ways of mentioning Islam without being too forceful and too abrasive or anything like that sort. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And take one more or khalas? Khalas, we'll take the last question then. Yes, sir. The question basically was, how do you give da'wah to the Muslims who left, or people who left Islam and became Christian or became what have you, Off the top of my head, wallahu a'lam, it seems like to some degree, you're going to approach them in a way that's similar. A Muslim who became a Christian, you will, in somewhat, it's going to be similar to how you would approach a Christian, except that now you have their background and whatever it is. Now, you have a couple of things. Their background could be to your advantage. Could be. Or their experience could be to your disadvantage. So they might have some experience that has nothing to do with Islam that make them hate Islam. Oh, when we were in Muslim countries, the Muslims did this to us. A lot of people from Iran have this problem. We always meet a lot of people from Iran in the US, and either they become atheist or they became Christian. Why? Because, in our country, this is how they shove it down our throat. So their experience could be working against you, or their background could be working for you. Because the strongest thing we have is the concept of Tawheed. Because it's very strong, and it makes a lot of sense. It's so easy for any human being on the planet to accept and to digest this concept. And so any Muslim that moves from Islam to Christianity, for sure he never really understood it, or there's some other factors. And I'll reference this one time. This family called me up and they said that their oldest daughter became a Christian. And so they want me to go and talk to her. And on top of that, they said this is the last time ever she's going to talk to a Muslim. This is the last time. We begged her. She said, I'll talk to him, but I'm not talking to any Muslim after that. I'm a Christian, that's the end of the story. But that's a lot of pressure on me, and I can't work magic. A lot of people expect magic. Oh, we'll get that foolish man who does the Shahada workshop. He must know how to do it. No, it's not magic. The problem is, on top of that, all this added pressure, she brings the head of her church to the gathering as well. So now I have to debate him and give her da'wah as well. And it's hard, because especially when there's a debate, people don't listen anymore. They take sides. She's going to be on his side against me. So I said, the only way is I'm going to look at my strength, which is Tawheed, and their weakness, which is Trinity, which doesn't make sense. No one can understand it. So the first question when we sat down, I asked the man, so how does Trinity work? He saved me a lot of time. He said, well, no one really knows how it works. He saved me time. Because usually they try to explain it to you and then you corner them, and then they tell you, look, we don't know. He saved a lot of time. He said, no one knows how it works. I said, okay. Then why would Allah reveal something that doesn't make sense to you and tell you it's the only way to salvation? Does that sound fair? Does it sound fair at all? And it's really, really unfair. And that's like someone telling you, and the only way for you to, and to leave this masjid is if you fly up in the air. Like, well, we can't fly, so how can you link this to that? So if you tell someone that the only way to salvation is to understanding this concept that doesn't make sense to people, what kind of sense does that make? So then I asked him the second question. I said, which of the two is easier on your mind and easier on your heart? The Islamic concept of one God that's indivisible and so on and so forth? Or the Trinity that's three gods in one? They're physically separate, yet they're still one. One of them dies for 3 days, instead of being two, there's still one. Which of these is easier? And in front of the girl he said, I quote him, the one that is intellectually satisfying is the Muslim version. So this was a case where I knew what I could use to my advantage, which is the concept of Tawheed. Makes a whole lot of sense. But you're going to have to, the wise thing would be to find out what caused them to move on. And that's why when I sat with this girl, I told her brothers, just try to keep the man away from me for a few minutes so I could try to talk to her. So the first question I asked her, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to find the truth? I really didn't care what number she gave me. If she said 1, or 3, or 10, it's all the same. It means she wants to find the truth. And if she said, I already have the truth, I know what I'm dealing with. And she actually said, I have the truth. So now I know what I'm dealing with. But it would be very foolish to just go without finding out what was the breaking point, what made them move on to that. So I would suggest first, you gather some information from them, basically by asking them, what made you leave Islam? First of all, were you even practicing? Did you know the Quran? So then you can say, well, you really didn't know Islam. So you don't criticize. Because this girl, can you believe, had the audacity to mention jihad to me? She had the audacity to say this. She said, well, in passing, she said, oh, and this whole jihad issue. Yes, salam. You've become a Christian, and now you want to sound like them. You're telling me this jihad issue. I told her, really? So don't use this tactic, but I'll let her have it a little bit, So I told her, listen, you're telling me about jihad and killing? What group of people have killed more human beings on earth than any other group? And what religion do they pertain to? Okay, my apologies to the Australian government. But it's Christians who've been killing people more than any other group. Look what they did to other African Americans. They eradicated the Native Americans. Look what they did to each other. The Spanish Inquisition, the Protestants, the Catholics and Protestants butchering each other over the years. And you have the audacity to mention jihad to me? Khalas, you're that brainwashed now? So anyways, find out, investigate, find out what caused them to leave, how much they knew about Islam before, and what convinced them of the other faith. Attack that only. So for example, if she said, it's just the fact that Jesus died for my sins, then my whole focus would be that, hey, nobody died for your sins. So whatever is the main thing that led them to the other faith, that convinced them, you attack that. The main thing that made them leave Islam, well, people were rude, explain that. And just, there's no formula, just go from there. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. I apologize for taking so long. But I would like to thank you for being an excellent audience. And I would like to thank the Sheikh and thank everybody for the great dinner and for the hospitality. And maybe I'm just a guest, but so far I'm loving Melbourne so much. I just want to find any excuse to move here, And then after a few weeks, you guys will be like, go back to America. But barakallahu feekum, sallallahu wa barak ala Muhammad, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.